For years, the U.S. China tech war has been a story of American offense and Chinese defense. Washington wielded the weapon of sanctions, and Beijing absorbed the blows while vowing self-reliance. But in the summer of 2025, the rules of the game changed. A move from Washington, intended as a final, crippling blow, has triggered a counterstrike so audacious and unprecedented that it threatens to tear a hole in the balance sheet of Europe's most valuable tech company and rewrite the playbook of economic warfare. This is the story of how China, pushed into a corner, stopped playing defense and began to weaponize its greatest untapped strength. Its power not as a producer, but as the world's most critical customer. Our story begins with the tightening of a noose. In recent weeks, the chaotic backdrop to this confrontation has only intensified. On August 13th, China unveiled its first domestically developed commercial e-beam lithography machine, a small but significant step. At the same time, ASML's Q2 earnings report showed that its China sales remained surprisingly resilient, accounting for over a quarter of its revenue, a sign of deep, continued dependence. And all the while, Beijing's Big Fund Phase 3 has been accelerating investment into its own domestic champions. It was in this tense environment that the West made its most aggressive move yet. The U.S. Japan-Netherlands Trilateral Agreement, a pact forged under intense pressure from Washington, officially came into full effect. This wasn't just about blocking future sales of advanced equipment to China. It escalated the conflict to a new, more brutal level. The alliance decreed a cutoff of all after-sales services for advanced equipment already purchased by Chinese firms, specifically targeting DUV lithography systems like the TWINSCAN NXT 2000i and above. To a casual observer, this might seem like a minor technical detail. To anyone in the industry, it was a declaration of total war. A lithography machine, arguably the most complex piece of machinery ever created, is not a standalone product. It is a service requiring constant calibration, maintenance, and software updates from its manufacturer to function. Without these services, an $80 million machine degrades into a useless pile of metal and glass within months. This move was a flagrant violation of all established norms of international business, designed to retroactively brick China's existing high-end semiconductor infrastructure. It was a clear signal that contracts and commercial obligations were now entirely secondary to Washington's geopolitical agenda. The West expected China to protest, to condemn, perhaps to file a WTO complaint. They did not expect what came next. The move sparked strong public outrage in China, but what followed was not mere emotion. While not yet an official government decree, a powerful and calculated message began to circulate through state-affiliated media and legal circles in Beijing. An ultimatum so shocking it was initially dismissed as propaganda. The demand was simple and brutal. Since ASML had unilaterally breached its legally binding service contracts, rendering the purchased equipment effectively useless, China was demanding that ASML repurchase every single lithography system it had ever sold to the mainland. Let's pause and consider the sheer scale of this threat. Based on incomplete statistics, mainland China has purchased over 1,000 lithography systems from ASML over the years. While many of these are older, less expensive models, analysts estimate that at least 300 fall into the more advanced DUV category targeted by the service ban. Even at a conservative average price of $80 million per unit, the potential liability for just this segment could approach a staggering $24 billion, a figure that would wipe out years of ASML's profits and send its stock price into a tailspin. This doesn't even account for the larger number of older systems or the massive damages China could seek for breach of contract. For ASML, a company with annual revenues around $30 billion, such a demand is not a negotiation tactic. It is an existential threat. But the ultimatum didn't stop there. The message was accompanied by a second, even more profound threat, a warning that if the contract breach was not remedied, China reserved the right to suspend recognition of Dutch intellectual property rights. Under China's 2021 patent law revisions, there are clauses that allow for compulsory licensing under circumstances of a national emergency or an extraordinary state of affairs. A legal framework Beijing could theoretically invoke in response to what it deems economic warfare. In a world where ASML's entire business model is built on its jealously guarded patents, this was a dagger pointed at the company's heart. This entire episode reveals a critical shift in the global power dynamic. For decades, the West has weaponized its control over technology production. Now, China is demonstrating how to weaponize its control over technology consumption. This is the birth of the weaponized customer. This brings us to the impossible situation now facing the Netherlands and its corporate champion, ASML. They are trapped in a classic vassal's dilemma, crushed between the demands of two superpowers. On one side is Washington, their security guarantor, demanding they sacrifice their largest market on the altar of American strategic anxiety. On the other is Beijing, their largest market, which has just demonstrated it is willing to inflict catastrophic economic pain if its red lines are crossed. ASML's earlier attempts to walk a tightrope, with its CEO chartering special flights to China, sending misleading signals and making promises that were later broken, have failed spectacularly. The tightrope just snapped. But what gives China the confidence to make such an audacious move? This is not an act of desperation. It is a calculated move born from a position of newfound strength, a strength built brick by brick behind the walls of the Western blockade. The timing is no coincidence. This ultimatum emerged just as China's domestic semiconductor industry began to show tangible signs of life. While headlines in the West obsess over China's inability to acquire ASML's most advanced EUV machines, they miss the more important story. Shortly after the trilateral agreement was implemented, Shanghai Microelectronics announced a key breakthrough in its 28-nanometer immersion lithography system. More recently, ZTE claimed the launch of a domestically produced DUV system for specialized applications. Let us be clear, these machines cannot yet replace ASML at the absolute cutting edge of 3 or 5 nanometers. That is not their strategic purpose. Their purpose is to provide resilience. The 28 nanometers node is the single most important workhorse node for the global economy, powering everything from cars and smartphones to military drones and industrial IoT. By achieving a domestic production capability at this level, China is ensuring its vast industrial base can continue to function and grow, entirely insulated from Western sanctions. By securing this crucial middle ground, China has built a strategic foundation. It now has a credible Plan B. And the existence of that Plan B gives it the immense leverage to threaten its Plan A supplier, ASML. This is the brilliant, brutal logic of China's counterstrike. The domestic breakthroughs are not yet good enough to fully replace ASML, but they are good enough to give Beijing the confidence to risk its relationship with ASML, turning the tables on its tormentor. Foreign media outlets, struggling to comprehend the shift, have remarked, it's not China's incompetence, it's mainland China's strength. So where does this leave us? This confrontation marks the beginning of a new, more dangerous phase of economic warfare. The old rules are gone. The assumption that commercial contracts would remain sacrosanct in a geopolitical conflict has been shattered. Now, past sales, existing investments, and the very concept of intellectual property are all on the table as weapons. The Huawei incident was a wake-up call, and as the People's Daily explicitly stated, Chinese companies were told to abandon all unrealistic fantasies and accelerate de-Americanization. This ultimatum is the result of that lesson learned. ASML, which sought to profit by playing both sides, is now facing the consequences. As one Chinese media outlet acerbically put it, who exactly ended up being sanctioned? It's a question that should be echoing through boardrooms and government ministries across Europe and Asia, who are now forced to question the wisdom of outsourcing their foreign policy to Washington. This episode is a harsh wake-up call. The West, and particularly the United States, has operated for years on the belief that it could wage one-sided economic warfare without facing symmetrical consequences. It believed it could control all the key choke points. But it forgot that the world's largest market is, itself, the ultimate choke point. The weaponization of technology has now been met with the weaponization of the customer. The rules of the game have been irrevocably broken, and the old masters may find themselves losing at the new one.